Welcome back to part 4 of the Warrior series. Today we're going to talk about knowing your other battles. Sam, have you ever been ready for battle and had the enemy tuck tail and run?
You know, actually I have, and it's kind of funny. I think that I have this thing, several of the guys I work with and ladies I work with, we've seen multiple times where we are worried about, man, we got to lead through this situation, sometimes with a team member or even an attender at the church, and we start getting ready. We formulate, okay, this is how we're going to do this. Yep. This is what we need to do. This is the plan, and we're all ready to kind of go in. But before we ever even have to go in, God has worked something out in their heart, and they're like, you know what? I have had a change of heart on this issue, or I see this differently now, and we're like, okay, well that's great. Okay, well. Good. We always say it's always nice when God paves the road before you and it's not bumpy or crooked or anything like that, and you just got smooth sailing. Those are great times. So,
yeah, they are. And I've seen that sometimes in the counseling room where I'll work with one spouse, the other, and something's come up. We're gonna talk about confronting an issue together. And a number of times the same thing has happened. The spouse that's going to bring it up brings this up. I want to talk about this today, and the other spouse just says all the right things. God's worked on me that this has happened, whatever, and God just worked it out.
Happens many times.
Yeah. It's really cool. I think the one thing I remember, I did a court case one time, which I hate to do, but it was a custody deal, and so I got subpoenaed and had to go to Tulsa for it. First time, this was early in my career, and I was scared to death. And so I had to be qualified so I could testify. So this other attorney was just ripping me apart, first because I was a Christian, and how did I know anything about counseling, and blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And went on, and the judge just finally looked at him and said, I'm qualifying this guy. And it was like, and the attorney he just dropped his head and turned around, walked back to his deal. It was very nice the rest of the time, but it was like, I just was sitting there thinking, God just told me, just be bold, say what I've told you to say the truth, and you're going to be okay. And it was, and it was just like kind of this visual picture. Okay, God won this battle for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So with David getting in trouble, if you could have counseled him after the victory, before he returned home, what advice would you have given him?
I think a couple things I would have said, and things that I've said to myself. It's because I think one of the things that's important for us is to look at other guys in history and then not repeat the same things.
Yeah.
Right. Learn from history. You don't want to repeat it. And so I would have probably said, listen, be humble and be on watch, because as we talked about in the last part, man, sometimes at our greatest highs, Satan will attack, and this is the case with David. He's coming off a big victory. Everybody's like, oh, you're king, you're the man, you're awesome. And so he thinks, now, I am the king, I am the man. I can have whatever my eyes see. And he lost some of that humility in that moment and probably let his guard down further than he should have, and believed more of what people were telling him than probably what he should have in that moment.
Yeah, and I think anytime we buy into the accolades of the world and let the world kind of elevate us, I think it's easy then for, like you were talking about, our pride, our selfishness to come in, and then it's like, oh yeah, we just kind of open ourselves up to things that we shouldn't be opening ourselves up to. Yep. I think what I would have told him, but I know the end of the story. So it's different. So it's easy to say, what are you doing? Why are you here? What are you doing that thing? And I think those are the questions that I've got to ask myself. I think it's that self-awareness of knowing what your vulnerabilities are.
Right.
And not, I think there's times in my life I've tried to act like those aren't there. Just kind of, I can handle that.
Or I'm past that. I'm beyond that
now. Yeah. And knowing that I'm not, and I've got to be aware of those things. And when I am, and when I'm leaning into the Lord, then I do pretty good. Yeah. But if I don't, I didn't do what David did, but I'm vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Very vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's the biggest battle with you?
I think that for me, one of them, I would say, would be I do oversee 29 of our locations here currently at Life Church, 29, and each one of those locations has a pastor, and that oversees that location specifically. So part of my role is shepherding the shepherds, pastoring the pastors, if you will. And so whenever one of those leaders endures significant pain or things like that, it is very, very. I got to be very careful because the enemy has a great way of trying to be like, well, if you'd have done better, if you would have helped them better, if you would have thought about that, if you would have gone up there more, you'd have done this or whatever, they wouldn't have had this problem. And so I always got to try to eat the fish and spit out the bones on what's being said to me. There's maybe elements I need to own, and then there's elements that I'm like, that's just a lie. That's just. And I've always heard it said that. I'm curious to get your take on that, but it's about, the Holy Spirit's going to convict, but not bring guilt.
Right.
The enemy will bring guilt. Conviction is just, man, I need to do this, and it spurs you on towards good things. Guilt is condemnation, it's self-condemnation. And so I always try to look towards, okay, conviction good, condemnation bad. So the battle would be making sure that I know what my part is and doing the best I can to support those leaders that are underneath my care, and just not. Because it's tough when you see one go down, in that spiritual
Absolutely.
battle we talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the enemy uses guilt. I totally agree with you. And once I start feeling guilty about something, I am useless to the Lord. I mean, I really am. Because I'm condemning myself. How could you use, all this negative stuff. But if I look at, okay, what do you want me to learn out of this? God, I know I messed up here. Or I could have done better.
Right.
Then I see healing. God redeems that. And there's a difference. A difference between being convicted, seeking the Lord, and letting him redeem that in your life, as opposed to feeling guilty and it just takes you down.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we're all vulnerable to.
Yep.
Getting that guilt, and then Satan just begins to twist it with us.
Yep.
And that's never going to be good.
He loves to do that when we're in battle.
Yeah,
sure.
One of the things that I think where I identify with David, as I was thinking back, and like if I have maybe done a marriage event that's gone well, or just finished writing a new book, I have this tendency to think, I just need to go back to the self. I need a little me time. So God, I'm gonna put you over here for just a little bit,
Right.
So I can, because I kind of deserve this now. And then I know that I'm as vulnerable then as David was.
Sure.
And I've got to realize that no, I can celebrate what God's just finished doing, but I got to celebrate it with Him, not without Him. And that was something I don't know. It took me a while to kind of figure that out.
It's good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for joining us for part 4, Knowing Your Other Battles. We'll see you next time.